Hello, dear student friends. I am Dr. Mohammed Shafee. I am working as professor in the Department of Community Medicine at JIIU's IMSR, Jalna. This video is about the test of significance. What do you mean by test of significance? So, test of significance is the application of a test to know the significance in terms of statistics. So whenever we want to prove the statistical significance, we apply a test of significance. So when test of significance is applied, when you want to prove that there is a cause and effect relationship, or there is a effect of particular intervention in a particular experiment, or you want to prove that cause and effect are associated. So in these situations, we apply test of significance. So in previous video, you have seen that there are three important tests of significance. One is Z test, second is chi-square test, and third is T test. So in this video, we will discuss about the Z test. So the first two tests, that is Z test and T test, they use the difference observed in terms of standard error. So in these two tests, we use the difference between two observations and also the standard deviation and standard error. Whereas in chi-square test, we use the proportion and we don't use mean and standard deviation and standard error. So in this lecture, we will discuss about the Z test. So whenever we apply test of significance, these are the following steps should be applied. So first, we should state the null hypothesis of no or chance difference. So null hypothesis says that there is no significant association between the cause and effect. And the alternative hypothesis says that there is a significant association between cause and effect. So when you want to prove the association, when you want to prove the statistical significance, we need to determine P, or probability of occurrence of your estimate by chance. So here we either accept or reject the null hypothesis. So when we accept and reject the null hypothesis, when we accept, when the p value is more than 0.05, it means that the difference is because of the chance, not by the factor. But if the p value is less than 0.05, it means that there is an effect of intervention and there is an association between the cause and effect, and we reject null hypothesis and accept the alternate hypothesis. It means that the effect is because of the presence of external factor. So we draw the conclusion on the basis of p value, decide whether the difference observed is due to chance or play of some external factors on the sample under study. So coming to the Z test, if the samples are large in size, or if the sample size is more than 30, Z test is applied. The means of samples in a population of differences between pairs of samples in a population also follow normal distribution. So here what we have to do, we have to find out the means of the samples in a population. When Z test is applied to the sampling variability, the difference observed between a sample estimate. So we have sample mean and we have population mean. So this means difference is expressed in terms of standard error. So please remember that whenever we apply Z test, we need sample means, we need standard deviation, and also we need the standard error of difference between means. So the score of value of the ratio between the observed difference. So whatever we need in both the test, Z test and T test, first we need the observed difference between the two sample means, and we need the standard error of difference between means. So when we take the ratio between these two things, one is observed difference between the means and second is the standard error of difference means, is called as Z. So we find out the Z value. So if the distance in terms of standard error Z score falls within mean plus minus 1.96 standard error. So please remember the properties of normal standard curve. If the distance is between in terms of Z score, if the Z score falls within the normal limit in the zone of acceptance, then null hypothesis is accepted. The distance from the mean at which the null hypothesis is present is rejected is called the level of significance. So it is the distance between the mean and the particular observation, it is called as level of significance. So as per normal distribution, only 5% of Z values occur by chance, that is beyond mean plus minus 1.96 standard error. So for Z value, mean plus minus 1.96 standard error is the confidence limit or it is the zone of acceptance. So Z value at the significant level will be significantly different, higher or lower. So here you can prove whether the intervention is significantly different or the intervention is better or intervention is inferior to the sample observation than the hypothetical or theoretical population value. So the Z test for means has two applications. One to test the significance of difference between a sample mean and a population mean. So you have a sample mean from the sample and you also know the population mean and you want to know whether these two means are significantly different or not, we apply Z test. So Z test, we go for observed difference between sample mean, difference between sample mean and population mean divided by standard error of sample mean. So please remember in numerator, in case of Z test and T test, we take the difference, whereas in the denominator, we take the standard error. Second use is to test the significance of difference between two sample means. So suppose we have two samples and we got two sample means. So we want to know whether both the means are similar or they are significantly different. So in that case also we apply the Z test. So here it will be observed difference between two sample means divided by standard error of difference between two sample means. So the four prerequisites which are required to apply Z test are the sample or samples must be randomly selected. It should be a quantitative data. So always we need a mean. We need standard deviation. So that is the features of quantitative data. The variable is assumed to follow normal distribution. So whatever data we observe should be having normal distribution in the population. And the sample size should be more than 30. So this Z test is applied if the sample size is more than 30. And T test is applied if the sample size is less than 30. So if the Z value increases, the P value or probability of an event happening by chance decreases. So P value will decrease as the value of the Z increases. So as you go on getting larger size of Z value, the P value will decrease and it will, we concluded that there is a significant difference between the two sample means or two observations. Coming to the one-tailed and two-tailed Z test, Z values on each side of mean are calculated as plus or as minus. So we know that in normal distribution in the center we have the mean, on right side we have positive values and left side we have the negative values. So a result larger than X will give plus Z value and the result smaller than mean will give the minus or negative Z value. Now take an example how to calculate the Z test. If IQ of an individual is 70 and the mean IQ is 100. So this is the sample mean and this is the population mean and the standard deviation of the population is 15. So how we calculate the Z? So difference, first we need to calculate the difference, that is x1 bar minus x2 bar or sample mean minus the population mean divided by the 15. So that is the standard deviation. So it will be 70 minus 100 divided by 4. So that value will be minus 2. So whenever the observation is larger than the mean, then the Z value will be negative. So if IQ of another individual is 115, so this 115 is so in this case, the sample mean is the smaller than the population mean. So the Z value will be negative. Now in this example, the sample mean is larger than the mean of the population. So the Z value will be in the positive sign or plus 1. So in a normal distribution, the highest and the lowest values are the two extreme ends or tails of area under normal curve of a frequency distribution. So how to decide about the one-tail test or two-tail test? So relative frequency or probability or any result occurring by chance at two tails beyond plus minus x bar 1.9 standard error is at 5%. So this will be the two tails. In a test of significance, when one wants to determine whether the mean IQ of malnourished children is different from that of well-nourished, the test is called two-tail test. So here you want to just know whether there is a significant difference or not. So it will be a two-tail test. In case of 5% level of significance, probability P will be 2.5% or 0.2 will be less. In case of 5% level of significance, probability P will be 2.5% or 0. P will be less than 0.025 at each end. So we need to divide this by 2. So on one side of the normal curve, it will be 2.5%, and another side of the normal curve will be 2.5%. So it will be a one-tail test. So in that, you take the level of significance at 2.5%, and P value will be considered significant if it is less than 0.025. So the result is compared with table value at the probability level of 0.05, taking into account the probability of such difference occurring by chance at both ends, or both tails will be from minus 0.025 to plus 0.025, or for two tail it will be 0.05 percent, or 0. P value will be less than 0.05. So the difference is being tested for significance, but the direction is not specified. So it will be a two-tail test. But if it is mentioned whether the sample mean is lower or higher. If it is lower, then we have to take the one tail test on left side, and if it says that it is whether higher or not, then it will be one tail test on positive side. If one wants to know specifically whether the result is larger or smaller than that what we can occur by chance, plus or minus 1.927, he excludes one end of the scale on theoretical ground. So if it is larger on right side, if it is smaller then left side. So here he specifies the direction on plus or minus side. So it will be a one-tail Z test. The significant level or P value will be applied to relative end only when we want to know if the malnourished have lesser mean IQ, then the well-nourished, the result will lie at one end or tail of the distribution. So it will become one tail test. So when the result of an experiment is compared with table value at P is equal to 0.05, the probability of higher or lower result occurring by chance will be half of this. So two-tailed it is 0.05 or 5%. So half of that will be 0.25. So such a test of significance is called one chance will be half of 0.05, that is 0.25. So such test of significance is called as one-tail T test. So one-tail T test, we take 2.5% constant interval and level of significance, and P value we consider less than 0.25. So if we want to know whether one particular drug is better than the other, it is one-tail test. Or when you want to know the action of a particular drug is different from that of another, it will be two-tail test. So if you want to prove better, inferior or superior, it is one tail. If you just want to prove it is different significantly, then it will be two-tail. So in case of one-tail test, half the value of P, but it will be simpler or easier to remember that in one test we refer the result against value under P is equal to 0.025 for 5% level of figure. This is one tail. If it is greater, the probability of result occurring by chance will be less than 0.05. The result is significant at 5% level of significance. So if it is smaller, the probability will be greater than 0.05. So insignificant at 5% level. So like this, we go for the Z test, one tail and two tail. Just remember that Z test, particularly in the exams, is asked about the two tail test. A scenario is given, like I have given the scenario of IQ 70 and mean population IQ 100, and you have to calculate the Z value, and you have to interpret, find out the corresponding P value from the Z table, and conclude if the P value is less than 0.05, null hypothesis is accepted, rejected, and there is a significant difference between the two means. So like this, we conclude, we apply Z test. Remember that Z test is applied if the sample size is more than 30. So thank you very much for this. Z test is a very simple test. You get a short note on Z test, and in the practical exam also they give one exercise to calculate the Z value and interpret. Sometimes they give you Z value itself, P value also they give, and they ask you to interpret the result. So you should be able to interpret the result of the Z value and P value. Thank you very much.